Hi everyone, it's Kathy from Sycamore and Cotton, and I'm back this week with bunches of bunnies. I have got, I think there are 10, if not 11 different projects that I do here. So join me and let's get started. The first project actually includes 4 different bunnies that I'm giving a different look to. I've had them in my stash for quite a while and just wasn't happy with them. Wasn't sure what kind of look I wanted to give them. I didn't really want to do the concrete look on these types of bunnies. And I've been thinking about doing chocolate, so I decided that all 4 of these are getting a makeover to look like chocolate Easter bunnies that many of us are familiar with from having them in our Easter baskets many, many years ago. Well, many, many for me, maybe not as many for you. I know some others who use spray paint to do their chocolate bunnies, but I did not have spray paint. I wanted to use what I had on hand, and I thought I might end up having to mix some colors together, but I found a small bottle of Apple Barrel's Burnt Umber matte acrylic paint. I'm telling you, it's perfect for chocolate. To look like chocolate. It is absolutely perfect, and it goes on really easy, so I'd say this didn't take a heck of a lot longer than spraying, and it certainly didn't have the runs that I would have had trying to use spray paint. So I am really happy with how these turned out. My inspiration for doing these bunnies in the chocolate was the one that's actually already got the first coat on it, there on the paper plate. It looks very much like a chocolate bunny that we used to see in our Easter baskets. And I'm sorry I didn't get the first coat videoed for you. I thought the camera was running and it wasn't. So you'll see here just in a minute which one I'm talking to about, and I think that you will recognize it. It did take 2 coats to get a good solid coverage. And honestly, that's all I did. I just painted on the first coat, let that dry, came back, painted on the second coat, and then did a little bit of embellishments around these sweet bunnies. At least 2 of these bunnies, including this one here, is vintage. It was a handmade ceramic, hand-painted ceramic. It had someone's initials and the years on the back, this one as well as the one that looks like a chocolate bunny that you would buy in the store. The shape of it, you'll see it in a minute. The one I had already done were from 1982, I think, and 1983. So, and now I'm working on the second coat for that bunny that I did in the beginning that I didn't video. And you can see it is very much like the candy version that we all are probably familiar with from being kids or being parents when we made our kids' Easter baskets. This one had like glass eyes. They may have been plastic, but they looked glass and they looked realistic, and I did not want to cover them with the paint. I wanted to leave them as they were because they were really dark anyway. And so I did paint over them and then just wiped off the paint to try to keep that realistic. And I think it turned out cute that way. I pulled out some ribbons that I had to tie around 3 of the bunnies' necks. I did leave one of them plain just in case someone preferred plain. And I also used a tag for the one that I'm working on right now. And you can see the tag beside the paper plate there in the upper right side of the plate. And these tags actually came from Graphics Fairy, and they're available online to print free. And I printed off a whole page of different varieties of tags, and I printed it on cardstock. And then to age it up a little bit, I brushed around the sides with the brown paint, and then I brushed over the back with the brown paint, thin down with a little water, and then I just wiped that off, and it dried just fine. And I cut a hole or poked a hole in the top with a hole puncher and added it on with some twine. This is the bunny that I started off with in the very beginning, and I just tied a blue double-sided velvet ribbon around its neck. Here I am. I jump around. Do you all jump around? I jump around from thing to thing all the time. But now I'm applying the tag. This is where I'm doing the aging part for it. I think tags really help embellish most things, and they're a really inexpensive way to add a nice embellishment. And this last one gets a velvet ribbon. It's only velvet on one side though, unfortunately, so I didn't bother with tying it in a bow. I just tied it in one little knot, and there I did try, and I knew it wasn't going to work, so I just left it like a scarf around its neck, and I thought that turned out nice as well. But let me know what you think about these chocolate bunnies. They were fun to make, very inexpensive to upcycle. This paint probably cost less than $2, I'm sure. I already had the ribbons on hand, and these look so authentically like chocolate. When I was taking the pictures, I almost thought they were going to start melting. So, next project is this tarnished punch cup, and I had these eggs that I had painted in dusk blue from a couple years ago, and I was kind of tired of that color, and I wanted to use the apothecary paint that I recently got for the first time. Such a popular DIY color, and has been for a couple of years probably, and I'm just getting on the board with it, and ordered some the other day, and recently it came in, and I've just been having so much fun using it. So I just give these little eggs a fresh update with that paint. And what I'm doing next is an idea from Susie on the farm. I don't want to put glue in this beautiful silver cup. Someone who purchased it may want to use it for something else, may want to switch it out for the holidays. And so I just used a little bit of painter's tape, put it on the bottom, set the foam on that, and I will glue the bird's nest to the top of the styrofoam, but anyone who buys this can easily remove everything that's in here without any damage being done to the silver cup. Thank you, Susie on the farm, for that good tip. So I'm just hot gluing onto the foam and then putting the bird's nest in there. I thrifted a bag of this Spanish moss that had already been rolled into nest shapes. So I just pull a nest out. It's gotten kind of smushed up in the bag, but I can kind of just shape it. And then I get some of my greenery, the green Spanish moss, and add that in there so that it gives it a little bit more dimension to the little nest, and a little bit more interest, and a little bit more color. And I don't even glue those in. I'm just sticking them down into the Spanish moss, and they'll stay in place. Here I'm using a fan brush with some brown paint on it just to add some speckles to these eggs and make them look a little more realistic. And this is the first time I've really had good luck making speckles because I used a fan brush. And I don't remember who I saw using a fan brush, but it's one of the makers that I watch on YouTube as well. And I thought, let me try that. And it made all the difference. It just really did a good job for me. So if you've got a fan brush and you're having problems making nice speckles on your eggs, try your fan brush if you've not before. Now I'm making a tag for this one as well and doing the same steps to give it a little bit of age and character so that it doesn't look brand new like it just came off my printer. And you can see I just paint the back, wipe it off. Very easy. And I just dab along the sides. Now I am gluing in the eggs into the nest. And I've already attached the tag, and I had a little ribbon on there that I really didn't like, so I end up, actually I used that ribbon to tie it on. So I cut back the pieces, the extra pieces, and then I use a chiffon ribbon to tie a bow. And to be honest, I'm not so sure if this is too much because you can't really see the handle of the teacup that well. So I don't know. I left it that way. If anyone doesn't like it, they can remove it. It's easily removed. And I'm just fluffing out the bow, trimming the ends. And here it is. I did decide to stack that cup into another cup just to give it a little more height and dimension and interest. And I think it turned out super cute. What do you think? Oh, next project is this Easter egg tree. So when I thrifted this, it had really old, faded Spanish moss between all the eggs. So I started tearing that out, and in doing so, it tore out some of the styrofoam. But I thought that, you know, since we're using hot glue, it's probably not going to matter a whole lot. And while these are nice colors for the eggs, they were old, they were dirty, and I wanted to give it obviously a fresher look. So I'm starting by using, guess what, Apothecary, and I end up using 3 or 4 different colors. In this tree, I used Celery by Waverly, and I used Cashew by Waverly, and of course the Apothecary. And the other color that I used was by Fusion. It was a sample bottle. Let me check and see what color that was. I believe it was called Blue Ridge. Well, I was close. It was called Blue Pine, and it's a mix between blue and gray, and I really like that color. And I may order a larger jar of it so that I can do some furniture in it. It's just a really nice color. You'll see here in a minute. And for the sake of keeping you from having to watch me paint each one of these eggs individually, I'm going to speed along to the end when all the eggs are finished and I start filling in with the Spanish moss. Actually, before I do that, I want to add some speckles to these eggs. So I'm doing the same thing. I just put some of that burnt umber paint in the little cup, water it down a little bit, and get out my fan brush, and then just start tapping. When the brush is first loaded with paint, I do tap it over the paper plate first, and with each time that I reload the brush, I do the same thing. So just get off any excess so that I don't have major big drips or drops of the paint on an egg. I don't like that. It causes running and just doesn't look as good. That dried pretty fast, but I still wanted to make sure it was dry before I start adding the grass in because I don't want to smear any of those cute little speckles. So I'm just using my hairdryer to give it a good dry. And next I move on to adding the green grass, or Spanish moss rather. I got this at the Dollar Tree, so it was, I guess, $1.25 or $1.50, whatever their prices are now. I don't know. Everything's priced differently now. But it's a really pretty green shade. But let me tell you, it stinks. It smells really bad. Not so much that I had to do it outside, but still enough that it was noticeable. And I just start by going down the side all the way from the top to the bottom. It really doesn't matter, but that's just the way that I started doing it so that you could see more of how I was placing it in there. Just adding some glue. Quite a lot of glue. I think I ended up using 3 glue sticks, 3 of the long glue sticks. If you've got something to, like that little tool that I'm using, that little purple tool, that will come in really handy to help you press that Spanish moss down into the glue to help adhere it without the risk of burning your fingers. Now I'm going to fill this around all the way around from the top down to that just above that last row of eggs, because I need to put some attention into the flower pot, and I want to get that done before I add the moss on the bottom row, because that would be quite messy. So I've got it all done except that last row, and I think it's really starting to shape up. And I am using another fusion paint, a sample bottle, and this one is in raw silk. And I just barely had any left in this little sample container, so I spritzed in some water, mixed it up, and it made it more like a paint wash. So I put that on and then let it dry. And I decided then to pull out my molds. Actually, I already had them laying there. And I thought, well, this will be cute to put some of these. If you see there, that one mold there in the corner, the pink mold, it's a bunny, a hopping bunny. So I decided to use some air dry clay. I first tried making it with glue, and that didn't work out well. And these two molds, actually, the two bunny molds, are made different directions so that you can put them facing each other, and I had forgotten about that. And the one that's facing toward the left is the one I had used with glue, and I was letting it dry when I started working on the opposite facing one, and then I used the air dry clay for that. And then I just decided to continue using the air dry clay with that one mold, so that I have 3 bunnies running around or hopping around the sides of this pot. I'm sorry I did not get it videoed when I was making these castings. I thought I had my phone on again, and I didn't. So my apologies for that, and also my apologies for being out of screen on some of these things that I'm doing. I tend to pull my work close to me, and then it gets out of focus or out of screen on out of view on the video. I'm using Titebond glue to attach these castings. After letting that sit overnight to dry, I came back in this morning actually and put another coat of the raw silk on. It was important that I wait overnight because, one, I did not want the paint, because it was so thin, I did not want it to hamper with the details of these rabbits. They're kind of not the best castings to start with, but that's okay. I went ahead and went along with it because I am giving this pot an aged look, so these play right into that. So that's one thing. If you're making something to look aged, you don't have to have perfection when you're making the pieces and parts that go along with it. After that paint had dried, I then used Waverly's Clear Matte Wax, and I did that because I'm going to come back in with Waverly's Antiquing Wax, and it is a brown wax, and I don't want it to leave too much color. I want to be able to wipe back a lot of that brown antiquing wax. Mainly, I just want a little bit on the surface, and then some that gets down into the cracks and crevices of the castings. So by putting on this clear matte prior to the darker one, it gives me more workability in how much of the darker wax that I leave on or remove from the pot. I use a shop towel to wipe off any of the excess wax, and then allow that to dry a little. I do pull out my hair dryer to force that drying and speed things along. And now we're on to that darker wax. I just use the lid and spritz some water in there. I don't even pour any extra of the wax in there. It's not going to take much at all. And by putting that water in there, I make it really thin, and actually goes on a little bit darker than what I had planned. But I use that and I just keep stretching it out and going all the way around. And then I start wiping it off with a dry shop towel. So you can see here where I'm pulling off most of that dark wax. and leaving pretty much just what's in the crevices, and then just how what little bit stayed on the surface of the pot. Then I get a dry brush, and I think I'm using a chip brush, and I just brush it along just to pull out some of that wax that stayed in the details as well, because there was a little bit more left than what I had planned on leaving. Now I took another shop towel and wet it down with some water from my spray bottle, and I'm just going around and taking back even more of the wax, the dark wax. Now I'm using just one little dot of the clear wax and dipping that dry brush into it and spreading the clear wax along the details of the rabbits, and still spreading out more of that brown wax. Next, I decide to dry brush some white over the entire pot, just to brighten it up from where that dark wax had darkened some of the pot a little bit more than I wanted. Honestly, the more layers you have, the more aged that it looks. So that was a reason for adding the white dry brush as well. Next, I pull out that apothecary again, and right now I'm just going around some of the places on the pot where it would have aged naturally had it been sitting outside, with maybe some moss starting to grow onto the pot, and just, you know, that aged look that happens when pots are left, flower pots and other things are left outside for a while. So I first just dab it on, or lightly brush on some of the paint, and then I'm using my spray bottle to spray and dilute the paint that I've brushed on somewhat. And then I decide to pull out another brush. This one's a dry, clean brush, and I'm just spreading that out. There's no method to this. I didn't apply it strategically. I'm just putting it wherever the mood strikes me. And honestly, I'm making all this up as I go, because I had no idea really what I planned on doing with this pot until, you know, I got to it. And actually in the midst of doing, I just decided to do this, and then I decided to do that. And that's just how a lot of my projects come along, is just getting into it and then deciding what to do as I'm working it. It's very subtle, but I do like the aging that is taking place on this pot. I pull out a stamp that I have and some IOD ink in, it's a gray, it's not black. Let's see, I can't remember which shade it is. Slate gray maybe, I'm not sure. I'm new to it, so I don't recall the name of it. And I'm just waxing or inking up the pad. I got this little pad from Amazon, I believe. IOD has one, a larger one, and but this is all that I have to use right now. I don't have that stamp, and it works just fine for me. I'm cleaning off the ink. And looking at it, I'm not sure that I like it. So I take a damp rag and start muting those places where I aged it with the cracking. And I do start to like it even better by doing that. It just leaves some very faint cracking. I decide to add another layer of a very light layer of the white dry brushing again. And now I'm ready to start adding the moss along the bottom edge. And I'm really liking how this turned out, but there's one more step that I still need to do to finish off, and that is to add this grapevine. I couldn't think of it at first. When I first thrifted this egg tree, it was wrapped in this egg vine, my goodness. I think I'm getting tired. When I first purchased it or thrifted it, it was wrapped in this grapevine. It also had a heavier cord like that was black that was mixed in with it. So I removed that because one, it was ugly. Two, I don't know what the purpose of it was. Maybe it had lights in it or something at one point, but I didn't see anything for electricity or even to turn a battery on. So I don't know, but I took that part completely off and then untangled this grapevine and then wrapped it around and secured it at the top and at the bottom. And ta-da, it's finished. I do like how it turned out. I hope that it'll sell when I take it to the shop. I don't know if people are still buying much of their Easter decor or not, but this is actually something that could stay out throughout spring, I think. What do you think? Yikes, how did I miss that bottle of Dawn and that dirty rag? I don't know, but just ignore it. It's not there. And next project is this little wood bunny. I thrifted this a while back and I kept putting off actually doing anything with it because I wanted to use it as a pattern to cut another one. Well, I was going to actually just use it and on wood to cut another pattern straight away. Well, it's Easter and I don't want to go through another season without using it. So I decided to just draw the pattern on a piece of craft paper, and I'll have that for whenever I decide to pull out my jigsaw and some wood and cut some more of these blanks. But I've taken off the prices. I think I paid $1.99 for this, which is not a bad price at all for something like this. And I'm cleaning it up after having sanded it really well. I didn't show that on camera, but it had some rough edges from where it had been just roughly cut and had not been sanded any at all. So I cleaned it up and now I'm ready to put on one coat of black paint, and I'm using Waverly paint in the color ink just to do one base coat so that I can distress back. My plan is to paint white over top of the black, and then I'll distress back just a tiny bit after everything's done. I do paint both sides because at this point I'm not sure if I want to put the design on both sides of it or just do it on one side and leave the back side plain. But regardless, I wanted the back to be finished in the same color that the front would be. So I did do the same to the back that I did to the front. And honestly, again, I wasn't even sure which direction the bunny was going to be going. And I actually determined that once I got all the paint on, I chose the side that had the smoothest coat of paint. So I painted it in the one coat of black. Now I'm covering it with a first coat of white. This is Magnolia chalk paint. And I'm not sure of the color of it, but it's what I'm using all the time now. A friend actually gave it to me, and it's been so handy to have. It came in, she gave it to me not long before I used the very last bits of my Rust-Oleum's white linen. So this works perfectly for me. So I'm just brushing on the first coat on both sides, top, bottom, sides, everywhere. And when that dries, I come back in and I stipple the top coat because I don't want brush marks, and I did want to leave a little bit of texture but not in the form of brush marks. So I stipple everything on for the top coat. And stippling in this case is just loading my paintbrush pretty heavily. I'm using a chip brush. I think that works really well for this, and just dabbing it on all over, just dabbing all around, and it leaves a little bit of a textured surface when you do it. 2 coats of paint was really good coverage and pretty much all that I had to do. And here you can see some of that texture that stippling leaves on it. After allowing it to dry probably a couple of hours, I pulled out the Flora Greca transfers from IOD. It's from their newest release. And I pick out 3 different patterns or 3 different designs inside that collection, and I'm applying them to the bottom of the rabbit. And I'll have some that comes up over the top of the ear and spills over just a little bit. Now, I happen to be someone who uses my transfers very sparingly. They're a little costly, but they really elevate a finished product into, or a finished project into a whole nother level. So they're definitely worth it. But I like to make them stretch into as many projects as I possibly can. So even with this one, and I only chose 3 of the designs within that floral collection, and there are several in there. I think there's 8 pages. I still cut and save as much as I can from some of the cuttings that I take off so that I don't waste any, and I'm able to use those cuttings that I'm taking off from these 3. One, I'm not even using an entire design of the 3. I cut out half of one and only use half of it. The one in the middle is a full design. I did cut out 1 flower. Now I'm placing here this one, and I cut off, there's some that spills over the edge, and sometimes I do let the design spill over the edge, and I think that looks really good, but in this case I just decided to cut it and not let that spill over the sides so much. And I ended up using those pieces, as I mentioned earlier, for some that will be spilling over the top of the ears. These transfers go on super easy. There's one that spilled over just a tiny bit. And here I'm making relief cuts because that helps you to avoid cracks and wrinkles if you can make relief cuts and cut all the way into the design. And sometimes you can even cut the design or cut through the design if you have places that you can overlap it without it showing very much. But this being a flat project, a flat board, I didn't really have to do a lot of that. So I'm just applying the transfers. And this is the one that I end up cutting in half so that I can save the other piece to use on a different project. There was only just enough space for the one. Now, some of those pieces that I had cut off, I'm going along the bottom edge and using some of those to fill in a little bit of the blank spots, a little bit of the bare areas. So see, that's one way to use up some of those. And now I'm applying to the top edge. I'm just kind of positioning the things to see how I want them, and then start adding them on piece by piece. I love using transfers. They are so much fun. They really are. Most of the time they go on really well, really easily. Every once in a while you may run into a problem depending on what the top coat of your project is. I have put wax on before and then tried to add a transfer, and that absolutely does not work. And I did use a butterfly just to throw it in for a whimsical bunny. And this bunny can be left out year-round, certainly throughout spring and Easter and into the summer. And I think even because of the colors of it, it would go well in fall as well. So now I'm just taking a piece of sandpaper, I think it's a 220 grit, and I'm just sanding along the edges to remove some of the white and reveal that black. So all of that black, number one, it was to prime the wood also. Because just around the edges is the only place that I remove some of the white paint and reveal the black, just for a tiny bit of a distressed look. I do like that look. If you don't have to do that. But I do advise putting a base coat on for your top coat anytime you're painting raw wood. And here it is. I'm really happy with how it turned out. I love these transfers. I like using transfers, as I've already said. I like just that little bit that spills over the top ears of the bunny, and just that little bit of distressing and that whimsical little butterfly. Let me know what you think about it. Now we're on to our next project, which is actually two pieces that I work on. And I had not even planned on putting these two in the video. I had not even planned on reworking them. I originally did these last year when I got a new ribbon mold, and I already had the bunny molds. These are from Prima Redesign from a few years ago. And I wasn't sure how I wanted to finish it. I did end up using a dark wax, and I did not like that. I pretty much like the other elements though, so I just decided to give everything a clean coat of fresh white paint and start over. And I kind of finished it similarly, but I did not use any dark wax, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. So now I'm just painting both pieces in the chalk paint by Magnolia. And I don't even have the color, the name of the color of this Magnolia Home Paint, because as I mentioned earlier, a friend had given it to me and she had it mixed. I thought it had the label on it, but the label is something that's just stuck on there from something else. It was a base one that was used to mix, and so it doesn't have the name, but it's a white paint and I like it. It's working for me. So of course any white paint would work. After getting those two coats of paint on and then letting it dry with the help of my hair dryer, I pull out my pink paint by Waverly. I think it's called Ballet Slipper. And I'm going over the bow on this bunny's neck with the Ballet Slipper. It's a dainty and delicate little bow, so I'm being really careful using a small brush to get that paint on there without smearing it on the bunny or around anywhere else around this block. And these are just wood blocks that I cut out myself and then made the moldings from air dry clay last year and put all of it together. I have the moldings, the bunny molding, the bows on each one. I put a trims molding around the edges. I used for the little knob on the top, that's just wooden little knobs, and I painted them with Rub and Buff. And here I am just doing a dry brush over the trimming mold. And the way that I'm doing this one, I'm going to do the other one very similarly, so that they'll be similar enough that they can be displayed together as a set. Haven't decided yet if I'll sell them as a set or sell them individually. I also get out an even smaller artist brush and very lightly add a little bit of pink to the inside of the bunny's ear. There I just took a dry piece of the shop towel and pressed it down on it to lighten it up a little bit, make it even more subtle. And I'm doing just tiny little marks around the eye, and I'll come back and do tiny little mark for the nose. And I got my brush wet, and that helped me to spread out some of that paint a little bit and lighten it up, because subtle is the key that I'm going for. Now moving on to the larger block, and this is a full bunny and not just the bust as the smaller one is. Here I'm dry brushing the trimming around the edges. And now I'm using that tiny little artist brush now to do the same thing to this bunny that I did with the first one, by adding just a little pink for its eyes, its nose, its ears, and even down on its little nails on its little feet. Very subtly. And I end up at some point getting right here. I don't know what happened there. I don't even remember, but as I started brushing it on, and it was watered down pink, very watered down, I decided just to not remove all of it, but let some of it stay, so it gave just a little bit more interest to this bunny. And it's almost not even noticeable. So, but I notice it, and I think that I like how that turned out. It was quite by accident though. This bunny is dressed up with pearls around her neck, and I made these little beads to look like pearls. Last year, that was part of the original design of this, and I made them with just little tiny pieces of air dry clay. And what I'm doing now is adding a couple of coats of Folk Art's metallic paint in the color Pearl White, because I wanted those pearls to stand out from the rest of the white on this piece. So I thought that was a nice touch. And then here I'm painting this bow in pink as well. Next, I get out my rub and buff, and it was a little dry. As you can see there, I've got the tube rolled up so that I'm squeezing out the very last little bits of it, and it was a little bit dry. So before I started brushing it on, I actually dipped my paintbrush in mineral spirits and then just mixed it in, and that helped to dilute what little bit of paint I was working with there and made it stretch farther, made it go on better. And now here I'm using my fingers just to run some over the tops of that bow to embellish that. And I'm also going to, here I'm using the brush to get it along the sides a little bit. Doing the same here with this bow, but I use my fingers again and use the bow my fingers to do the trim along the edges. And they're done. I am happy with them this time. I think that there will be someone out there who likes them and takes them home. Let me know what you think. This little super fast and super easy little project is another one that I had not planned on including in this video, but while working on other things, I just noticed the bunny in some of my stash here that's around me, and then I noticed the flower pot, and so I thought, here's something that I can do with these little tiny bunnies that I got last year and then never really did anything with them. I think I got a bag of maybe, I don't know, 10 or 8, and some of them were standing like this one is, and some of them were sitting. And they had like a Kelly green satin ribbon around their neck tied into a bow. And I didn't really like that, so I took it off and I switched it out with a pink ribbon. And that flower pot, the little terracotta pot, had already been whitewashed. And I just got out a handful of Spanish moss, glued it into that pot, and then sat that sweet little bunny on top of it. And I think it turned into a really cute little piece of decor. Now we're on to the final project for this video, and if you've watched this far, thank you, thank you, thank you. So this last project is going to also be an upcycle of another piece of decor that I made, actually probably 2 if not 3 years ago. It didn't sell the first year in my booth, and then I pulled it out. I didn't put it in last year, and I decided to pull it out and see what I could do. Number one is this casting that I put on this beautiful tarnished silver cup. I had just left it white, and I decided that just looked unfinished. So this is the same blue that I used earlier, and it's blue pine, the fusion paint. And I thought that since it kind of has a little gray in it, that it would look well sitting on the tarnished cup. And so I take a brush and start lightly painting that on just one coat, because this paint has so much pigment that one coat is all I needed for this small piece. And I'm being very careful not to get any of it on the cup, just taking my time. And I use a small piece of a dampened shop cloth just to get anywhere that I did actually get a little paint on the silver. And you saw me take out that styrofoam with the bunny attached to it. Again, as I had done with the cup earlier in the video, I didn't want to use glue to make that permanent in this nice, beautiful silver cup. So what I'll be doing here is the same thing that I did earlier. I will be using a piece of tape to tape it down in there. And that just adds a little bit of stability, temporary stability. And next I am working on the rabbit, and I had the same issue with this that I had with the 2 blocks that I completed earlier, and it is that I had used a dark wax and I just did not like that dark wax. This is actually a styrofoam bunny, so it's very lightweight and it takes the paint well, but I don't know, I just was not happy with the finish that I had on it. So I'm giving it another coat of white paint, just brushing it on there. There was quite a bit of texture already. I think when I had painted it originally, well, actually it would have been, I think, the second time I painted it, I used baking soda with the paint just to give more texture. And so what I did here is just brush it on, and I think it took just 1 coat to go over everything. I'm getting that tape in place now to put it down in the bottom and return that styrofoam. The stick that the bunny is sitting on or is perched on is actually a stick that I got from the yard. You could use a dowel rod, but I just went out in my yard and got a stick. I like the natural look that it gives. And I had already put the Spanish moss along the top of the cup and also just a dab of it underneath the bunny, so it wouldn't just be that bunny sitting there like it's floating in the air. Now I pulled out some of my blue double-sided velour, it's velour, ribbon, and I'm just tying a little bow around the stick. And the very last thing that I do for the last finishing touch is to dry brush just a bit of white paint across the front, up and down, and across the front of this casting. And I think that it turned out well. And before I forget, I did want to mention that each of these projects have been sealed with a top coat of spray-on polyurethane. I like using that. It's a matte finish. It's really easy to use and it protects everything. And I do sometimes use some of the other products that are available, but for all of these, since it was really fast and easy, I used my polyurethane spray. I didn't video it because it's in a different room. So, but yeah, all of these did get a top coat. And here it is. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out, but I won't lie. I am looking at that bunny and thinking, chocolate. Maybe I'll make it chocolate. I don't know. We'll see. I think I'll put it in my booth as it is, and if it doesn't sell, I can always make it chocolate later. Let me know what you all think of this particular project as well as all the others. I really appreciate if you've stuck with me this long. This is a kind of longer video than I usually make. I think I did a total of 10 different things in here, although I broke them down into segments. I believe there are 7. So I had fun. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you've had a wonderful day or having a wonderful day. Thanks for joining me. And if you haven't yet, please leave a comment, like, subscribe, share my video. Those are all things that help creators with their content reaching other people. It helps the algorithm, and YouTube will see that you like it, or you're sharing it, or you're commenting and engaging, and they're going to push my video out for others to see. So thank you so much for your support, and I'll see you next time.